All right, folks, Mr. Bucko here with a couple more examples about circles. In this example, we have to give the center and the radius of the circle, whose equation is x squared plus the quantity y plus 5 squared equals 100. So general form of a circle here, general form of an equation for a circle, you'll notice that we just have x squared. We don't have x plus or minus a value here, so it's not maybe clear what that x coordinate of the center is. But since there's nothing that's being added or subtracted to x, what's going to happen here is this is going to be 0. So to read this out here, it says this problem comes down to determining the values of hk because that's the center, and then r, which is the radius in the general equation of a circle, which is what we have right here. And we're going to compare the given equation, which is kind of what I was just kind of talking about a little bit, given to that general equation right here. So you'll notice that this is different than the given one. The general form is different than our given because there doesn't seem to be an h. Like here's minus h, but there's nothing there. Well, that just means that h is 0. And then we have k, we have minus k, so this is something we need to kind of pay attention to with respect to the general equation of a circle, is that it's y minus the k value. Notice you have y plus a value here. So that means if we're going to change this to y minus and maintain this equivalence to y plus 5, then k in this case will be negative 5, because y minus negative 5 is the same as y plus 5. And then the radius squared is right here. So this is the radius squared. 100 is the radius squared. So therefore, the radius of this circle is going to have to be 10. So let's just kind of lay this out here. So here's our general form, and then here's the given form. H is 0, as I kind of mentioned before, because there's no value being added or subtracted to this x. It's just x squared. So this is the same as x plus or minus 0 quantity squared. It's exactly the same thing. So h is 0. And then k is going to be negative 5. Again, I know it's a plus 5 here, but the general form is y minus the k value. So if I want to change this to y minus this value and maintain the equivalence to y plus 5, that k value is going to have to be negative, because y minus negative 5 is the same as y plus 5. And then our radius is going to be 10. It's not 100, it's 10, because this is always equivalent to the radius squared. And if the radius squared is 100, then the radius would then be 10. So therefore, the center of this circle is 0, negative 5. If we were to graph all the points that satisfy this equation, the center of the circle would be at the point 0, negative 5, and the radius would be 10. And that is what this circle's properties are. Along those notes, let's say we still have that circle, so here's the next example. Is the point negative 8, 2 on, inside, or outside the circle from the example that we just did? So we have this point negative 8, 2. Is this point on the circle? Is it inside the circle? Or is it outside the circle from that previous example? What we're going to do here is we're going to take the equation that we're working with. This is the circle we were working with here. And we want to know, is this point right here, negative 8, 2, on this circle, inside the circle, or outside the circle? Well, if this point is on the circle, then when we plug in negative 8 for x, because it's the x value, and 2 for y, because it's the y value, then that point would be on the circle. And then if it's not equivalent, or if it doesn't work, then it's either inside or outside, and we'll take a look at what that means, what that looks like. Plug this in. So we're going to substitute the negative 8 for x and the y for 2 into the equation, and this is kind of the mess that we get here. So let's just kind of look at what this is. Just take a negative 8, plug it in for x, so negative 8 squared, plus this 2, the y became a 2 because the y value is 2, plus 5, that's from our general form, squared. This should equal 100, but when we simplify this, negative 8 squared is positive 64, 2 plus 5 is 7, and 7 squared is 49. That's where this comes from. This equals 113. So this is not the same as 110. So what we can say for sure based on this is that negative 8, 2 is not on the circle, because when we plug negative 8 and 2 in to the equation that we're given here, it doesn't equal 100. So it's certainly not on the circle. Well, is it inside the circle or is it outside the circle? Well, it comes down to how these two values compare. 113 is bigger than 100. And if 113 is bigger than 100, that means this point has to be outside of the circle because this radius is bigger, so to speak. If we want to go from the center to this point 82, it's larger than 10. It's the square root of 113. So therefore, this point, negative 82, is outside of this circle because when we plug it in, we get a value that's larger than the radius squared. If this value is smaller than the radius squared, then it would be inside the circle. Once it is larger, it's going to be outside of the circle.